Defense Secretary Ashton Carter met with Iraq's Prime Minister in Baghdad today and got an update on the battle for Mosul. Iraqi forces backed by the U.S. military are trying to retake the city from ISIS. Hundreds near Mosul have been treated for breathing problems after ISIS set fire to a sulfur plant Thursday. Holly Williams has the latest.
Iraq's elite special forces are closing in on Mosul from the east, slowly retaking Christian towns and villages that were seized by ISIS 2 years ago. In the town of Bartella, 10 miles from Mosul and long deserted by its residents, ISIS tried to hold them off with at least 8 suicide car bombs. Vehicles laden with explosives and driven at high speed towards the advancing army. The Iraqi military fired back with a helicopter gunship. Near Bartella, we met Major Jamal Namik Ali, a Kurdish officer, with 50 mortars in his pickup truck. He said ISIS left them behind when its fighters ran away in a hurry.
What else did they leave behind?
They took their guns with them, he told us, but they left canned food and generators. Some of the extremists may be fleeing, but others are fighting to the death. ISIS propaganda glorifies those who martyr themselves for the so-called Islamic State. Iraq's Prime Minister said this week that the offensive is moving faster than expected. But on the front lines, it looks like a long and dangerous slog towards Mosul. In the words of a senior US official we spoke to today, the battle to retake Mosul could be a multi-month endeavor. Rena.
Holly Williams, thank you.
The battle to retake Mosul broadens as the Islamic State group launches a spate of attacks to the east of the city. Explosions have rocked Kirkuk, an oil city under Kurdish control. A government compound and a power station were among several buildings targeted in an assault that began in the middle of the night. Islamic State group militants have taken their fight east in an apparent effort to divert the thousands of troops closing in on their stronghold. A major assault to the northeast of Mosul is still underway. The strategically important town of Bashika has been pounded by airstrikes from Peshmerga positions. The operation is being supported by the international coalition, including around 5,000 US troops.
Anytime that we engage in airstrikes in an urban area, it is very problematic. There are obviously lots of areas for the enemy to conceal themselves. There are areas where they can blend in the civilian population.
It's the 5th day of the battle to liberate Mosul. Baghdad says Kurdish Peshmerga and Iraqi forces have advanced faster than expected. In a setback, a member of the US military was killed by a roadside bomb on Thursday, marking the first American casualty in the campaign.
All right, Iraqi forces are closing in on Mosul, facing fierce opposition from ISIS. A senior US official calling it a complex endeavor, expecting it to last for months. ABC's Martha Raddatz near Mosul with the very latest.
Good morning, Paula and Tom from northern Iraq. This attack on Mosul is expected to be the largest attack since the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. There are about 30,000 Iraqi troops taking part. About 5,000 U.S. troops are assisting the Iraqis. You can see some U.S. soldiers behind me right now. And about 500 of those 5,000 are outside the wire, outside the bases, assisting the Iraqis close up, but not on the very forward line. This battle is expected to take months and will be more intense the closer they get to Mosul. The aftermath is expected to be even more complex. Tom and Paula?
All right, thanks so much, Mark.
Fierce fighting and airstrikes have broken the 3rd day of a 4-day unilateral ceasefire in the divided Syrian city of Aleppo. That from the Monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Saturday's air attacks reportedly hit a key front line in the city's southwest, and clashes and shelling continued throughout the day. There have been nighttime clashes as each of the daytime ceasefires have ended, but Saturday is understood to have seen much fiercer fighting on top of the first airstrikes. Russia has said it called the ceasefires to allow civilians and rebels to leave. Meanwhile, there's condemnation from the US after an international inquiry blames Syrian government forces for a third toxic gas attack in the civil war. It's said to have happened in Idlib province last year. As Iraqi forces battle to retake Mosul from ISIL, almost 1,000 people are being treated for breathing problems after a sulfur plant was torched near the Iraqi city. The so-called Islamic State set it ablaze on Thursday during fighting around Al-Mishraq, according to US officials. No deaths have been reported. The fire was out on Saturday. The cases presented were suffocation, he says, caused by the large fire in the sulfur factory. Elderly men and women were affected, as well as children, especially those with asthma and bronchitis, and other cases. A cloud of white smoke filled the sky where the factory is located, mingling with black fumes from burning oil wells, also said to have been torched by ISIL. Elsewhere, Kurdish Peshmerga fighters have been clashing with ISIL in the village of Batnea, near Mosul. It came as Iraqi army vehicles moved closer to the militant stronghold. Meanwhile, ISIL leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was spotted in Mosul a few days ago, the Kurdish minister revealed on Saturday. He declared a caliphate and himself the leader of the world's Muslims in 2014.
Critical battle against ISIS. A U.S. service member was killed in Iraq. Now, this is the first American combat death since they began the operation to take back Mosul. And ABC's Alex Marquardt is right there on the ground where a new round of fighting is underway. Alex, good morning.
Good morning, Paula. That's right. This morning we're learning more about that American service member. We have seen these U.S. troops in action. They are vital to taking back Mosul from ISIS. And as this fight ramps up, the U.S. general commanding the anti-ISIS coalition is calling the terror group a challenging and cunning enemy.
The battle for Mosul seeing some of the fiercest fighting yet as advancing forces get closer to the ISIS-held city. The fight stepped up with the introduction of Iraqi special forces who have fought to within 6 miles of the city limits. American and Iraqi officials saying the advance is going faster than planned. But ISIS has stepped up their resistance as well, sending out waves of suicide bombers. Here, an ISIS vehicle speeding toward the U.S.-backed forces, who blew it up. The biggest obstacle, IEDs littering the roads and open plains, including one that killed that U.S. service member northeast of Mosul on Thursday, traveling with local counterterrorism forces when the roadside bomb hit an American armored vehicle and rolled. This morning, ISIS showing what they do when squeezed. Sleeper cells attacking in the nearby city of Kirkuk. Long considered safe, it erupted in heavy gunfire. Multiple suicide bombers attacking police stations and a power plant.
You can see here the streets of this city are now very quiet. Not long after this attack, officials imposed a curfew telling everyone to stay home so that they can root out any remaining insurgents.
Authorities say most of the attackers were killed as we saw this long convoy of Kurdish soldiers speeding towards the center of Kirkuk.
The fear of what ISIS will do if they lose Mosul and other territory goes well beyond Iraq and Syria. We've already seen those awful terror attacks in Europe. They're expected to seek revenge and lash out internationally. George?
Fighters pour out of Syria and Iraq. Okay, Alex, thanks very much.
Defense Secretary Ash Carter is meeting with his commanders in Baghdad this morning to assess the U.S.-led coalition to retake Mosul, Iraq's second largest city and the main ISIS stronghold in northern Iraq. U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer Jason Finnan of Anaheim, California, was the first American to be killed in the offensive, which began this week. Yesterday, ISIS launched a counterattack on the city of Kirkuk, killing 46 people. Holly Williams was there.
Good morning. ISIS may be losing ground on the battlefield, but by attacking Kirkuk, it's shown it can still carry out deadly terror attacks.
We were with this local SWAT team as they fought a gun battle with ISIS. The surprise attack started with multiple suicide bombings before the extremists holed up inside buildings, including this house under construction.
We know there are between 6 to 8 ISIS elements over there inside that building.
6 to 8 inside that building over there?
Yes.
On the streets below, the bodies of dead ISIS extremists. Security forces said there were 50 behind the assault. The SWAT team began firing tear gas canisters, throwing up a smoke screen before sending a team into the building.
So they've been shooting at the building and also firing tear gas canisters, and now the assault team is about to go in.
But as they approached, they came under fire, and one of them was hit.
So one of the SWAT team was injured, they had to pull back, and now they're trying to pin the ISIS gunmen down inside the building.
Commander Louay Mohammed is from Kirkuk and told us he'll fight ISIS until every last one of the extremists is dead.
What's in their heads?
Revenge, he said, for the Mosul offensive.
The fighting continued in Kirkuk overnight. This may have been retribution for the Mosul offensive, but it's also a foretaste of what that battle will look like. Gunfighting in a densely packed city. Jeff and Jamie.
Holly Williams in northern Iraq, thank you.